good evening to you from Carson City. You know, on the first day of the legislative session, very little actually happens. There's pomp, there's circumstance, there's ceremony, and there's anticipation for the grind that's ahead. The question is when that grind takes center stage. Every legislative session starts the same way. Ceremony is tradition, just like the political give and take on the horizon.
Today is mostly ceremonial. Today is the celebration, and then tomorrow the work really starts.
Once again, Las Vegas Democrat Steve Yeager is Assembly Speaker.
But I think we're committed to try to work together and find solutions.
Across the hall and political divide.
Reality is, are the Democrats going to be making this session just about making the governor look bad?
Republican Robin Titus is the Senate Minority Leader.
Do they want to solve problems?
So what are the problems? Even before sorting out education funding and the host of other issues in Nevada, lawmakers are waiting for Governor Joe Lombardo's amended budget. The $12.7 billion one his office sent last month included a $335 million deficit. By law, Nevada's budget has to be balanced.
I was surprised, frankly. I think that we have the monies, and it's unfortunate that there was some misunderstanding about where the funds could be moved to, and I think that's what happened.
Senator Titus is confident this is a small, fixable issue. Speaker Yeager?
Receiving a proposed budget with a $400 million deficit is unprecedented. I kind of view it as a 5-mile race, and we were starting a mile or two behind the start line.
Common ground. Republicans and Democrats are interested in public school accountability on funding and student achievement. Both sides want to improve health and human services, though their methods may differ. Both sides want to address affordable housing. When the session starts, everyone's on their best behavior. 120 days from now, expect a different atmosphere in these halls.
So I think we understand each other a little bit better, and I really think we are all committed to talking to one another.
Do they want to solve problems?
It sounds like you're describing politics.
Well, you know, and that is politics, but there's also policy.
Well, also on the agenda, tougher punishment for DUIs, for other sorts of criminal activity, domestic violence, things like that. They'll talk about that here at the session as well. There's those massive film tax credit proposals. There's 2 of them from the Democrats, one on the Assembly, one on the Senate side. We'll see if those make it through. We'll touch on some of those issues as well coming up in the next half hour. For now, live in Carson City, John Langler, 8 News Now. Well, Brian and Vanessa, as always, it is a race when the legislative session comes to a close. Bills right now are flying between the Assembly and the Senate on the other side of the building right now. And in one key case, Democrats are kind of fighting with each other. We'll get to that in a second. Remember, Democrats control both houses up here. The day started, though, with Governor Joe Lombardo meeting with Democratic leadership in the Senate Majority Leader's office. Afterward, he had no comment to us. Neither did Senate Majority Leader Nicole Cannizzaro. But key topics that are still left: education reform, the governor's amended crime bill, which has now passed. It ups the penalty for DUI with death to between 10 and 25 years. It's now back over with the Assembly. But the measure causing most of the consternation is expanding film tax credits. There are 2 bills, one in each chamber, both backed by Democrats, each worth millions of dollars in tax breaks. The question is whether lawmakers can finish their work by midnight or hold a special session. Real quick, you said plan of action. Define that for me.
Detailed things that we need to get done in the next few hours to make sure bills are coming across. Right now, it's really a timing issue. So, we just need to get bills over here to the Assembly, and we're on track to do that.
So that was Democratic Assembly Speaker Steve Yeager speaking after that meeting with the governor and the Senate Majority Leader, basically saying, we don't think we're going to need a special session. Nobody here really wants one. I also spoke just recently with the Senate Minority Leader, Dr. Robin Titus. She is saying that Republicans are kind of sitting on the sidelines watching Democrats debate this film tax credit bill. The longer that debate and that holdup goes on, the fewer bills Republicans say will get passed. So far, Governor Lombardo has signed more than 200 bills into law, and we have less than 8 hours left until the session is over. We're live in Carson City. John Langler, 8 News Now. To you, as you mentioned, less than an hour to go and a lot to do with the legislative session, which does beg the question why these hallways are so crowded. It's because the Assembly and the Senate are adjourned right now. They're in recess. Some of them were just in caucus. They're about to filter back into the chambers and get their work done. The big news tonight has to do with one of the last big holdups. That's the film tax credit proposals, that expansion. And there's an effort by the Democratic Senate to kill a measure from the Democratic Assembly. Assembly. Late this evening, Senator Roberta Lang introduced an amendment to Assembly Bill 236. You've heard about this before. That measure would provide millions of dollars in tax breaks to Sony Pictures and Warner Brothers, and then in exchange they'd build those studios in Summerlin. At the same time, though, Senator Lang had her own proposal, working with UNLV and another studio company. Well, tonight she proposed studying the Assembly measure instead of voting on it. Observers would suggest that essentially this amendment kills the Assembly's version of the bill. Is that what you've done here?
What I've done is try to find a solution where we can all work together.
Okay, wait, if there was a solution, that implies a problem. What was the problem?
The problem is that we couldn't find, I made a proposal a couple weeks ago to blend the bills, and that didn't get any legs, and so this is my next attempt to try and get on common ground.
Now, on this specific measure, that still has to be heard over in the Senate. That hasn't happened yet. Then it has to go back to the Assembly. And that's what's going to happen now for the next checks notes, less than an hour. Bills have to go back and forth. Already tonight, though, a voter ID bill from Speaker Steve Yeager has been passed by the Senate. That has to go back to the Assembly. Amended housing bill from the governor's office also back across the hallway. There's just a lot going on right now. And again, there's not much time to do it. Back to you.
So, John, we're also hearing that a big step was taken towards justice for Reba's law, the animal cruelty law. What can you tell us about that?
Well, that is one of the measures that passed tonight that actually is now going to Governor Joe Lombardo's desk. That's Reba's Law. We've covered that story as well. That dog that died in the valley in the summer, last summer, left in a plastic bin to die. So that measure has been approved by the Senate and the Assembly. Now goes to the governor's desk to potentially be signed into law. We'll see what happens. So that's done. But as you can see behind me here, there's still a lot more that is not done in Carson City. These are the Nevada Senate chambers, and tonight they sit silent, waiting for 2 years from now when they'll be used again. But last night, this is where the dramatic conclusion to the legislative session played out. Moving day in Carson City. Lawmakers and staff are packing up. 120 days of work is done. This is Senator Ira Hansen's office. Hours earlier, the Republican was on the Senate floor.
All attempts have been made to deny this
He
body.
and other Senate Republicans slowed proceedings to a crawl.
That is what I appreciate my caucus standing up and saying is actual shameful maneuver that happened.
They ran down the clock, upset over a change to legislative committee appointments. When midnight struck, everything stopped.
Just have to see when the dust settles tomorrow, what really happened and what didn't happen, and read it in detail.
Now it is tomorrow, but the dust hasn't settled. So what really happened? Democratic Assembly Speaker Steve Yeager.
One of the big things we did was make sure we give more compensation for hard-to-fill teacher positions in Title I schools, special education, charter school pay raises.
Republican Assembly Minority Leader Greg Hafen.
I was just over at the governor's office talking about some of the bills that he's going to have to veto. I think he's already vetoed 25 bills so far.
Some laws that died. Governor Lombardo's crime and health care bills, education reform measures, film tax credit expansions. What did pass? The governor's housing bill, constitutionally required budgets like education. Reba's law, adding stiffer penalties for animal cruelty. Already, Governor Lombardo has vetoed more than 15 measures. They include a series of gun laws, policies for transgender prisoners, and election access measures from Democrats. However, in a statement, he gave an optimistic review of the legislative session and its victories. Given the pace of Wednesday's exodus, maybe it'll take a little longer for lawmakers to feel the same. This legislative session, in a word.
Long.
In Carson City, John Langler, 8 News Now.
On 8 News Now.
And thank you for joining us here from Carson City. I'm John Langler for a special edition of Politics Now. This is a Friday here. The special session started on Thursday, and they are still at work, the lawmakers inside the legislative building as we speak. So it's a very busy agenda. It's an unusually big agenda for this special session. As always, the agenda set by Governor Joe Lombardo. Now it's just a matter of what can be accomplished in a pretty tight time frame. And again, as I mentioned, that work is going on right now. But there were some fireworks from the start. Back on Thursday, as things got going in the Assembly, it was assigning bills to committees, and there was a hang-up. Reno Democrat Selena LaRue Hatch tried to get the film tax credit expansion bill tossed out. She used a legislative rule to force a vote. Her effort to kill it failed, but the assembly at that time was deadlocked at 21. So the bill went forward, but it's on shaky ground.
I was just very concerned that this is not a measure that should be considered in a special session. That is for emergencies. The film bill, which barely passed the Assembly by one vote last time and didn't make it through the Senate, doesn't seem like an emergency to me.
Well, I view it as a jobs bill, right? I mean, the economy is very soft right now. Over 1 million people were laid off in the country. Visitation to Las Vegas is down. That has real impacts on our state. What the film tax credit bill would do is create tons of construction jobs in the next few years and then bring a new industry here.
Aside from those fireworks, lawmakers are also discussing cybersecurity improvements after that cyber attack on the state government, possibly creating a Nevada version of SNAP so that it can provide food stamps if the federal government shuts down once again. Also on tap, there's the governor's crime bill, including longer sentences for drunk drivers who kill someone. Assembly Bill 4 would increase the 2 to 20-year sentence to a maximum of 25 years. If the defendant has 1 or 2 prior offenses, the sentence could be between 5 and 25 years if this is approved. That bill, by the way, to create the state SNAP program also was heard quite quickly at the legislative special session. Seems to have early bipartisan support right now. It was being worked on by Governor Joe Lombardo and his office, as well as Democratic State Senate Majority Leader Nicole Cannizzaro, where she is pitching the bill. Here she is. We also caught up with Democratic Assembly Speaker Steve Yeager as the session was just getting started. Here's some of what he said. There's a lot on the agenda. Finally, some critics of some of the measures that are being discussed here say this special session is supposed to be for an emergency, and they don't necessarily see a lot of emergencies. Is this really a special session, or is it just an extension of the regular session?
So special sessions are really interesting because the governor is the one who sets the agenda. So really the governor decides what is worthy to be put on that agenda. So that's really a question for the governor. As the legislature, I think our job is to come in and decide, are these good policies? Do we want to do them? But I think you ask a question that makes me think, would we be better served as a state if we had a legislative session every year? Because I think part of the reason we're in a special session is we don't go back into a regular session until February of 2027. And that's a long way to wait to get some of these done. So I hope that someday our voters will allow us to have annual sessions so we won't be in this situation. This is now my 6th special session, and I have 5 regular sessions. So I served more special sessions than regular sessions since I've been here.
Should point out that the discussion there with Speaker Yeager was just before the drama over the film tax credit bill as the Assembly was getting started, as he was talking about that measure. We also spoke with Republican State Senator Jeff Stone about his thoughts on the special session. Do you think this is an emergency session?
Well, if you read our Constitution, it says extraordinary situation. And so the governor has seen some extraordinary issues that necessitated him calling a special session.
So back to that sort of drama at the beginning of the Assembly as they were gaveling in. We did speak with Assemblymember Selena LaRue Hatch, the one who instigated that vote on the floor. We talked about her concerns over the film tax credit bill and public comment at the special session.
So it tied. That means our motion failed, but it also means the bill would fail. And so I'm going to continue talking to my colleagues. I'm going to continue representing my constituents who don't believe in this bill. And I'm going to continue asking questions.
You also brought up the issue of telephonic participation by the public, referencing, of course, the Assembly member who's not here right now. There must have been some discussion before you guys started today about your concerns. This can't have come out of nowhere. How long have you been concerned about the process of this special session?
So we have not been filled in all that much prior to the special session. It's one of my biggest concerns is the lack of transparency around this session. I want to make sure that the public are able to participate. And so that's why I made that comment is I believe the public need to be part of these hearings, and I think they need to be able to call in and voice their support or opposition for all of these measures.
Lawmakers hope to have everything wrapped up by Monday, although I did speak with the Senate Minority Leader, Robin Titus, the Republican from up north here. She says she's leaving on Sunday no matter what. She can still participate remotely, of course. We'll have a complete recap of the legislative special session coming up for you next week right here on Politics Now, and of course our newscasts and 8newsnow.com.